Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Aging Gracefully, a talk show for Evergreens. Looking after a person in a situation of dependency is not only physically and mentally demanding, it also requires significant time management, effort, and self-sacrifice. We are here today to discuss a topic that is not only important but also deeply personal to many of us: caring for the caregivers. How can we effectively support and care for those who look after others? We have Father Juvie, who's been with us on our previous episodes. But for those of you who don't know, Father Juvie is a well-known Redemptorist and a scripture professor. He has served in the General Council in Rome for many years. Welcome, Father Juvie. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Dr. Olinda Timms is a medical doctor trained in CMC Velo and is specialized in anesthesiology. Her interest is in medical ethics and bioethics and has published a book, Biomedical Ethics for Students and Doctors. She is a member of the Bioethics Forum Bangalore and serves on the Health Commission of the Archdiocese of Bangalore. She is an adjunct faculty at the Division of Health and Humanities at St. John's Research Institute, Bangalore. Thank you, Doctor, for making yourself available for this show. I also welcome a wonderful group of audience and look forward to a lively participation from all of you all.
Well, it's nice to be back here once again on the panel and to have Olinda. Actually, Dr. Olinda is someone I came to know through the Bioethics Forum. And what really stands out is her commitment, her dedication, and very strong on ethics. No wonder that book has come out from you. I also want to have a shout out to all the many people across the world who get in touch with us as a result of these programs, who either drop in a note or an email or even call and share their experiences. And we want to thank you for that, because that's what we mean it to be, a talk show that is interactive. Well, just to share on a very personal note, I've just come back from Kenya, and we had gone to visit our Redemptorist communities. We had some presentations, some programs, and that Sunday that I was there, the people in the parish who are familiar with the Redemptorist Media Center, Bangalore, knowing that I was in town, asked if I would come and facilitate a live session, an interactive session on aging gracefully. So I'm so glad that what we're doing in a small place like this really reaches across the world.
Yes.
But what I found fascinating with this group, it was not just the golden agers or the senior citizens, but we had a whole gamut of them across the board who were interested, some of them because they were in this process of aging, others because they were caring for them. And this very theme that we have introduced, something that we in RMC have been pondering about, was something that came literally from the ground level. Yes. No wonder, as you said, it's so important and so urgent that we look at this, and that this will provide a platform for experiences that people are already going through, but perhaps through our conversation might be a little more enlightened, or it might open some more windows in this regard.
Thank you, Father Juvie. Thank you for sharing your experience in Kenya. But our program, Father, has always been caring for the elderly. But now we recognize that the caregivers require our support and care. What do you think about it?
Well, I think when thinking of the seniors, the elderly, one cannot see it in a vacuum or compartmentalized. It's part of an integral family setup. It's part of the process of life. Because as we age, we move from, say, in our youthful or middle-age years of independence, we then move into interdependence. We become dependent on other people, but we can still handle so many of our faculties and our abilities yet. But there comes a time when we move into a stage from interdependence to dependence, because now more and more things have to be done for us. And therefore, because we do not see it in a vacuum, but we see it integral as part, it's important because, well, the caregiver naturally takes care of the one, but the health of the caregiver, the well-being of the caregiver is so integral to really caring for somebody who's elderly and aging. And therefore, as I said, we need to look at it in a comprehensive way. And this is a situation that's across the board. In fact, Dr. Olinda might be able to throw some light on that, just to see the different ways of what this caregiving means, what its implications are, not just from the medical point of view, but from the way it touches the different aspects and dimensions of our life.
Dr. Olinda, Father Juvie explained a lot of things, but why do you think we need to care for the caregivers?
That's a very good question, Gila, and thank you for that introduction, and also to Father Juvie for actually organizing this kind of a discussion around this population of caregivers that we really very rarely speak about in society and also as a medical profession. This group of people who care for the elderly, for those who need chronic care, and for those who are coming off surgeries and require some care at home, are usually a very invisible group. They are not pre-selected. Their role as caregivers is generally unplanned and undesignated. And it is a role that they are forced into sometimes and may or may not be willing or able to take up this particular role of caring. And I feel that we need to really think about them as very important people in this entire social context of caring for the elderly and caring for those who are sick. Their role is important, their needs are important, and I think equipping them and caring for them is an ethical concern that we have to engage in, and we have to have these conversations at the level of the family, the community, and also as a medical profession.
Just to broaden the conversation, actually, the role of the caregiver is multidimensional. There is the physical aspect, which one cares for, looks after, provides the medication, makes sure the diet is followed. But there are other dimensions as well. The emotional well-being, engaging them in a conversation, sometimes anticipating their needs. Then there is also the spiritual dimension, especially those who might feel the need sometimes to talk to a priest or make their confession. So actually this caregiver is looking at so many different aspects of the personality. And I think it's important to keep in mind. Sometimes they're doing it naturally. I'm just putting a name to it, I'm just describing it so that we get a greater awareness of the rich task that we are doing already. Or if not, maybe this is something that needs to be incorporated in this dimension of caregiving. Now, most often, and I'm talking in the context of the family, because later on we can even talk about the different stages of you need an aide or assistant in the house, someone a little more professional. We'll come to that later. But right now, talking in the context of the family. You know, it's a new kind of role. Perhaps a spouse is taking care of the husband or the wife. Earlier, they were interdependent, but now one has become so overly dependent on the other. Or the children, in their younger years, they were looked after by their parents. Now the shoe is on the other foot. It's another role. And sometimes to make that switch inside is so difficult. And as you rightly pointed out, sometimes you're just pitchforked into that role you never expected, or by default, because you were the child nearest, it fell on you. So, in other words, there was no automatic or long-term preparation for it. And so I just want to bring that also out into the open, because these are real struggles. And we all grow into roles, especially in a role of a caregiver. And therefore, there will be other qualities that are needed. But I just thought that's important for us to keep that in mind, so that we will understand not only the role, but how we will grow into that role.
Yes, Father Juvie. I think as family members and as a society, sometimes it is very easy and convenient for us to think that the carer is doing this work very easily, very comfortably, very willingly, and that may not really be the case. Sometimes they have to put their lives on hold. Sometimes they have to put away their dreams or aspirations temporarily and sometimes even permanently. And this could leave scars that we have to be sensitive about. So I do agree that we have to look at this role of the carer differently and engage with carers in our society.
Caregiving demands much from the carer. Like Dr. Olinda said, I'm sure that the caregiver experiences a lot of anxiety and stress. And how does this affect one's aspirations and health? I'm sure I want to ask the audience because I'm sure some of y'all are caregivers or have been caregivers. So if some of y'all could share your experience with us, we would love to hear it from you.
Dr. Olinda, you mentioned that nothing prepares a caregiver for their role. You're absolutely spot on. When an event happens to one of your elderly loved ones, it's like a bolt from the blue. I mean, you're in a complete state of shock because all of a sudden the loved one that you've known for so many years is going through such a traumatic experience. And especially if that person is not in the same location as you are, you just have to drop everything and run to the other location, to take care of them. And depending on the intensity of the ailment or the affliction, the initial phase of looking after them in the hospital, trying to put them back on a better healthy situation. You go through a lot of stress at that time, and during that time your family back in your home is all alone, and they're trying to run the show. Kids need to go to school and the like, and during this process the help that you get from various sources matter a lot, especially from your employer. If you have an understanding employer, that's the first thing, right? And an understanding employer firstly helps a lot. Then once the person is stabilized, then starts the second phase of bringing them home and caring for them. It would really be useful, I guess, if when an elderly patient is discharged from, let's say, a hospital environment, there is somebody there to sit with you and talk to you about the softer aspects of caregiving. How you need to do, what you need to do, what help is available, how you can manage a setup, and so on and so forth. Everything, from trying to get a hospital bed, is a challenge. You got to make your own decisions, whether it's a single Fowler bed, a double Fowler bed, a whole host of things like that. And then how do you feed with the Riles tube? So it's so easy when you get discharged from the hospital. There's a prescription. You got to give this. Come back for a checkup in a week's time or 2 weeks' time. But I think something more can be done to help from that perspective, and such help is difficult.
Thank you. You have brought up 2 or 3 very important points, and especially the aspect of the suddenness of the role and what the duties of the medical profession should be at the time when they are transferring the care of the patient to the carer or the family. So one of the things we have seen is the absolute panic and apprehension of the person who is then taking the patient home. You can actually see the weight of responsibility and concern in the body language of the carer, because now this person has to care for their family member in a way that they have never done before. And also, coming off a medicalization, they feel that they could make mistakes, there could be errors, they want to do the right thing, they want to do everything, they want to know about medical aids, they want to know about personnel that they can reach out to, they want to know what to do in a crisis. They also want to know what is a crisis, what does a crisis look like. And suddenly, they are full of questions, but I've been given to understand that very often they don't articulate those questions right away. And so while they agree that yes, they are the caregiver and they will take the patient home, this conversation is not had at the bedside, at the time of discharge. Maybe just how to care for the patient immediately when they get home, and maybe a bed and what kind of nursing care. But there is far more that of reassurance that the patient's carer needs to receive, that you can do it. This is how you care for the catheter or the cannula or the nasal tube or the oxygen, and all of that is going home with the patient. And that they can reach out in terms of calling the doctor to ask if they're doing something right or wrong. And there is a role here also for the other family members, who have thrust this one person, this one family member into this role. Supportive, encouraging, not people who, then take account from that one carer who haplessly is there now and is trying to fit into the role the best they can, left the family, feeling alone, feeling responsible, afraid. There is a role, very important role, that other family members and the community can play to reassure this one person that you are, doing the right thing, you are, you're capable. If you need any help, you can reach out to us. If you need any advice or you need any support. Somehow we are culturally not attuned to this. We just presume that this role is something that every individual needs to be able to fit into when required, on call.
Yes.
And you must not complain,
Yes.
you must not back down, you must not walk away. This is a cultural expectation, and therefore rising to the occasion becomes a socially expected behavior, and that may not be what is happening inside. Inside, you just want to hand it over to someone else, or some experts, or some helpers, or the nurses, and you don't want to say it, because then it looks like you're abdicating that responsibility when you should have really taken over. And this caring role is not for everyone.
Yes.
Very often the family gives it to the closest woman in the family, because women are natural caregivers, and therefore this happens. And I'm so glad to hear you speak of it as a man, because women, someone's sister or someone's aunt or someone's daughter, these are the natural caregivers that people turn to and just expect them to pick up that role despite what is happening in their lives. Just pick up that role and then just work with it, So there is a gender issue here, which we have to also be conscious about. That it's not only women who should be pushed into this carer role and thrust into it all of a sudden, and everything expected of it. And then you have the family taking account of how things are going. And then if there is a reversal or a setback, there may be comments made about what happened and how that happened. How did the patient aspirate? Where were you at that time? Who was with the patient? And these are they can be very cruel questions at a time when a person is trying their best. So you have brought up this role, and I feel that from my side, as a medical professional, we should ask questions about the health of the carer. We will see this carer time and again bringing the patient back to the hospital for checkups. We need to ask not only about the patient, but ask the carer about their health, about whether they get a break or not. Do they feel they need it? Because then the doctor can ask the other family members maybe to take on some role and help the other. We should also ensure when the patient is leaving the hospital that we have a conversation with the carer alone, a conversation of reassurance, a conversation of small technical things, that you needn't hire a nurse for, you can do it yourself. But we have to reassure them and give them that confidence that they can do it. It's all they need. Mostly there is the love, there is the commitment that you find in the carer, which, as I said, should not be taken for granted, but it's there, and we can build on that, giving them confidence that they can come back to us, giving them the number, something as simple as, here is my number, reach out to me.
Yes.
Doctors sometimes don't do that, and they're not available. And when you need help, you get a junior doctor or you get someone else. So thank you for bringing up those points from your lived experience.
Fortunately, in my case, we didn't have a medical emergency. So I live with my mother and I'm her caregiver. We are a family of 6 siblings, all sisters, and I have the privilege and the honor of looking after my mother.
That's so nice.
So my mother was a very independent lady, a very strong woman, and she brought us all up after the passing away of my father. So now in the evening of her life, we can see the change in her. She has slowed down a lot and she needs help. Initially, it was difficult for her to ask for help, but now she has realized that, and which makes it a lot easier for all of us. But at the same time, to let go of all that she was doing all these years and to someone, although it's her own daughter, it's not very easy. So we have our little differences over what should be cooked on a certain day or how this thing should be arranged or something, or the little differences. In those times, it's the support of my siblings, my sisters, that really makes it so easy for me to handle the situation for both of us, in fact, so there is no need of a confrontation because they take over immediately and they are able to speak to both of us and get a perspective from both of us and settle the situation. So I think for caregivers, sibling support is very, very important because it helps to soothe things. Like for my mother, I understand how difficult it is for her, to ask me for help to get up. Something she did just so naturally, but now she cannot do that. And I mean, sometimes she does it, sometimes she needs help. So those times, when you think that everything is going out of your hands, the love and support she gets from all her children is what she banks on, So that way, I think sibling support and even spiritual life, both of us spend a lot of time in prayer. So that helps us, even if we cannot understand, come to a agreement on certain things, prayer helps us a lot. We spend time with the RMC on the Rosary with the Redemptorists. We watch the mission now that's going on. So she watches the online mass. I go for the regular mass. But all that helps her, the sermons and the talks that she listens to, helps both of us to get a better perspective of where we are going and how we are going and what are we looking for, our ultimate end. So all that helps us. So spiritual life and sibling support, I think, is very important for the caregivers to help us cope through this difficult time that's there for both of us. The other thing is, like, if it's not like I'm stuck at home, I have to look after my mom all the time. Anytime I'm needed by my children, sometimes my daughter calls and she needs support, or I want to go for a retreat, or I want to go for a program like today, then I have sibling support again. They all come immediately and they take over for my mom. They take over and look after my mom. Likewise, when they come on holidays for Christmas or their holidays, they make sure that they take over caring for my mom. And I am left free to do whatever I want. Also, my mom gets very anxious if I get sick or, if I don't take my medications on time. And because she feels that if anything happens to me, then there's no one for her, So so we are like, although she is dependent on me, we are kind of interdependent. And I think that's the case with most older people, unless there's a medical emergency like he told us. So that's also a big support. Like I know that I can go anywhere because I have support from my sibling. So that's where the big families help, when there are many members in the family. So, you always have someone who's available to come and take over for you.
When you have a smaller family, or many of your siblings are not located in the same city or they're abroad, um, looking after the elder or the sick on a continuous basis is very stressful. You're very lucky if you have siblings who can back you up and give you a break. If not, it's a 24/7, 365 days a year job and role. And unfortunately, you don't have the level of and quality of respite care in India, where you can safely entrust the person for good keeping for a few days. You don't have that confidence. So when you're in that kind of situation, there's a lot of frustration that builds up. You get angry as to why am I in this situation? Why is this situation happening to me? And you go through the process of anger, frustration, denial and reconciliation. And then a lot of times when you feel that, the only recourse is prayer and having a conversation with the Almighty, and asking for a lot of grace. Because when you're tense and in the kind of situation, you start yelling and screaming at the person to whom you're caring for, and then you feel really, really, really bad. And so what can help is solitude and prayer, and asking the Almighty for His grace, so that you may continue to bear that responsibility on an ongoing basis. So that's something that I think a lot of individual caregivers who are from small families, or maybe the only sibling in the family, should consider as part of their well-being.
Yes, I think you have made another very important point here about the fact that any person could be the only caregiver, and that brings an additional burden on the caregiver. Knowing that you have siblings somehow spreads this responsibility and affords a source of comfort and camaraderie. And I don't think it is always that way, but as we heard from that testimony, it could be that having siblings could be a source of great solace and relief. Otherwise, the individual has this relentless responsibility, and that takes a psychological toll on your sense of well-being and your sense of purpose in life. And you revisit these things, as you so well put it, that you begin to accept, after the initial stages, you begin to accept that this may be what your role is in life, and for some that might not be an easy thing. And being human, how we respond to this is also something to be accepted in some ways, but it is painful, because we could respond with anger, we could respond with silence and irritation, impatience, that we don't want to display, but it comes out, it is manifest because it's part of our turmoil inside. And the patients also are not always very easy to handle. They have to accept their situation, they have to accept that they need your care all the time. And for a person who is independent and a person who is cared for others, very often elderly patients find it very difficult to accept that care in a gracious way. There are some who do, but for most, it's a very bumpy road of acceptance that one needs to be cared for so intimately and all the time by their own child who has never cared for them before. And so there will be times of snippiness, and times of grief that they will give the carer. And the carer is then expected to take it in their stride and be stoic about it. But very often that is hard and it takes. And these are the very issues that lead to carer burnout, something that we have to be concerned about because it directly affects the caregiver. So here we have to turn to friends then, if we have no family. Friends, further relatives, and create an environment for the caregiver, for oneself as a caregiver, to find time of recreation, of self-care, whether it is pursuing small hobbies or traveling a bit or visiting family, or finding some way to get relief, finding some way to get a meaning out of this new role, which might be interminable. There is no way in which to say it, because you do not know when it can end. It could end, it may not end very soon. So that is one way that society or the family or the extended friends and community can help, creating ways in which this person can find recreation, relief, a good source of caregivers, probably developing in communities and at the parish level, caregivers who can be relied on, because that was the issue that you brought up as an important issue. Can we rely on substitute caregivers? Maybe not. But maybe if we create this genre with the help of hospitals, with the help of the medical profession or nursing, or retired nurses, retired doctors, then we can confidently step out and have those moments of recreation and relief. Thank you.
One other aspect in this whole caregiving issue is the children in the family. As Father rightly mentioned in the beginning, it's not a vacuum kind of a situation. The whole family is involved in looking after an elderly. Things like going on a family vacation, or even just an outing, where you just go without any stress or anxiety of having to come back in 2 hours, or, that kind of a time-bound outing, which begins to happen when you have a sick, a bedridden person. So these are the things the children find it difficult to cope, and we are kind of caught in between.
We have two sisters from the Little Sisters of the Poor, and their mission is to care for the elderly. Sisters, how does spirituality help in caring for the elderly? Sister?
Our spirituality is poor in spirit spirituality, because old age in itself is poverty, because they give up, they have to lose everything. And our vocation as Little Sisters of the Poor, founded by our foundress Saint John Jugan in 1839, has been an accompaniment to the aged all through these years.
And sometimes the conversation can be not just painful but brutal. I did it now, it's your turn next.
Correct.
What do you think? I'm the only one who's their child? No. You hear conversations like that. Some persons are thrust with that job, and it's not easy, because you've got to handle your family obligations, you've got to handle the things in your life. Just because you're so far away, that doesn't mean that you can abdicate that responsibility. You do what you need to do to the degree what you have, but you must be involved. Whether you're near or far, your involvement should be an involvement that will support the caregiver on the ground.
This brings us to the end of the first part of our talk show, Caring for the Caregivers. We will continue this discussion in the next part of Aging Gracefully, a talk show for Evergreens.